Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ninth episode of Coaching Gupshup with Smita and Kiwa. Yeah, hi Kiwa,
Hello,
how are you?
doing great. How about you?
Yay, it's a Friday and we are back with
Like
our,
this energy every Friday.
with our learnings of the week and some reflections. We are back again, and today's topic is sustaining to thriving. Yeah, Kiwa, what do you think? What do you think about this topic? What does it mean for you?
I personally really like this topic. So when we were discussing and then you suggested, like talking about something like this, I was like, oh wow, yeah. Like I actually smiled because I could think about the shifts that have happened in my life after I got into the coaching space, and it's not like you didn't do certain things, but like how you do them, what mindset you bring in, and we'll dig deeper into that in our conversation. But yeah, that's the first thought that came to my mind, and I was also reminded of this quote. I actually pulled it out for us for this conversation. So when you think of from sustaining to thriving, this quote by Maya Angelou, which is, my mission in life is not merely to survive but to thrive, and to do so with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style.
Wow.
Yeah.
All very profound words there: passion, compassion, thrive. Wonderful. And when we were, when Kiva and I were thinking about the sustaining to the thriving, and we as we are owning our skills as coaches, how the coaching mindset really plays such a key role, to bring that shift or to hold the skills as a coach, right? Um, So maybe we can cover about competency too today, Kiva. I think the coaching mindset is embodying a coaching mindset very recently, not so recent also, but that's a new addition in the coaching competency. The coaching mindset says it's open, curious, flexible, and client centered. The four words seemingly very simple in definition, but I think when put to actual practice, flexibility, if you think of it, it's not so easy, right? I mean, very easy to read and know the meaning. What do you think, Kiva?
Absolutely. And it does sound like, when you think about it, like, yeah, there are times when I'm open or when I'm curious, but I was thinking about times when it's tough to do that. It could be, let's say, with somebody whose company you don't enjoy as much. I mean, outside of the coaching session. And how do you actually apply a lot of these competencies that time? And it's not about forcefully applying them, but I think when you practice this and embody the coaching mindset truly in small ways, it starts playing out in life. Like I was thinking about one aspect that I think one of the sub points is about being mentally and emotionally prepared for the session. And I remember during coach training with my coach Nobantu, like we would have these presencing activities that would help us even to get into the coach training zone, and how we could use a lot of those activities for ourselves before any coaching session with a client. And I realized how it actually helps you to just be in the moment, firstly. And once I think you are in that zone, you're in a better position to kind of start observing how these different other competencies of being open or flexible start playing out. So yeah, I was reminded of that right now.
Yeah. And what you said earlier, it's like when we don't like someone, right? Like before we, I think, came into this world, like that's my experience. Like if we don't like someone, if we don't like, and the thought process doesn't match with the other person, so it would more or less be like staying away or keeping it away and not indulging or having those arguments and not reaching anywhere, but you know not agreeing with the other person. All that created a lot of rift in the mind. But I think now that that actually this reminds me of a quote by Abraham Lincoln, which says, I don't like a man and I need to know that man better. And it's not in quotes, but so it's like it's actually, this is about thriving, is what I feel, Kiva. It's like, when I don't like someone, it's not that the other person lacks something, or you know, is not complete in themselves or whatever, right? Like, it's really like, how do I, uh, you know better of that person, and what do I need to know better of, that person, and how can the relationship improve by me knowing that person better. So, and this is all about the, I think this competency has a lot to talk about, a mindset, and it really helps to improve relationship. I'm thinking of also of an example, but I see that something is coming up as you're listening.
I'll just add it very quickly. So when you said that, I was thinking that when you don't like something about someone, it said that it's actually a reflection of what's going on internally inside you.
Mm.
So I think when you think of the coaching mindset, it actually the core of it also is to have that self reflection that kicks in automatically, I guess, because you're practicing so many of those competencies during coaching, that your mindset also, like personally, you start playing out in those ways, and you can actually observe the patterns that are coming out, right? Like, why do I always, let's say, cut off from a particular kind of a conversation or a particular group of people, right? And it's not so much about them, or a particular person, but what's happening internally and where's that coming from. So
Yeah,
as much as I thought it's curiosity to know the other, it's also curiosity about what's happening within.
yeah,
you know
absolutely. And that's about the self-coaching piece, right? Like, I think, for all coaches, self-coaching is such a key element. Uh, but then each to their own, right? Like, I think what we are, I know about you, and then that's also been my experience, that after every conversation, the reflection piece actually is like a self-coaching. So whatever we have learned, whatever was the client's moment, there are some takeaways for us as coaches, and then some of it might relate to our personal lives as well.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. Because when you're in that conversation at times, like there are connects that get formed, right? But we are in the moment. So you aren't really thinking about yourself at that time since it's about the client. But when you step back, you can draw those conclusions for yourself. And there's learning. And after every conversation, I do feel like, oh, wow, I learned something new about a person and about myself as well through that.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And I'm just reminded of a friend who, because of her upbringing, or because of whatever, right? Because of her environment, that she's grown up, being judgmental, like, judging the other was very common in their environment. And it was not seen as something negative or bad or all that. It's more like a habit. So every person, every situation, in my conversation with her, I would see that she's very, she's judging a lot. And somehow when I became aware of how it doesn't serve, right? Like, it doesn't serve the other, it doesn't serve the other to move forward, right? Like, they're really stuck, and we kind of get succumbed in their thought process, and it doesn't help the other person to move. But rather than giving a lecture or a gyan on why why this is cannot be helpful for you, kind of in my conversation, I started to demonstrate in situations like that, to say that judge judging the other person never serves the other. I mean, or neither it is serving you. It's actually draining your energy by doing that. I think
yeah.
somewhere, Kiva, I'm just seeing that shift, and that makes me really happy to say that, it's not really about when you are wearing a hat of a coach and you're sitting in that conversation, is where you are trying to make that transformation and helping the other person in some way, partnering with the other person for some transformation. But I think outside also, with these little, nudges, that is possible.
And I think the example that you shared actually aligns completely well with 2.5, the competency, subcompetency that uses awareness of self and one's intuition to benefit clients. Right. And that's, I think, what played out with you and your friend, right? Like in that relationship. So.
Absolutely. I think intuition is again to a coach's role is so key, and to trust in your intuition, to take, and have that courage to call it out, right? Like I think here it was, in my example, it was like a courageous thing which I'm kind of demonstrating, right? I'm deliberately demonstrating in front of her so that she
Yeah,
gets the message,
yeah.
and successfully, because she's a friend, she is a well-wisher, and everything good. So she could get the message out of it. And of course, after that, we also had a very candid conversation to say that, and it's a habit, right? Like it takes time. But did she become aware? Yes, she became aware of.
And at the same time, it's like you could see and observe this as a pattern that was probably playing out. And you were in a position to embody that mindset, the coaching mindset, and not throw more triggers at her, right? Of the kind which would help, but not help her to see the other side that also exists and how she can operate. So,
Yeah. And I think this I would really call it, the sustaining to the thriving. It's like these skills, um, not just help, for you to make your living. It really helps to make relationships better. It really helps people in general, right? Like she is not, maybe she cannot afford a coach, or maybe she doesn't need the feel to have a coach. But like we know, everyone needs a coach. A coach needs a coach, and everyone needs a coach. So how can we make, through, because we are learning all these, how can we make, in our small ways, accessible to people, and make, you know enhance their awareness.
the wonderful way to do that is by actually embodying those things in your day to day, like you did with your friend.
Yeah,
And as much as you do certain things for others, I think the entire process leads you to doing things for yourself. I was reminded of how after I actually got into the coaching space and times when I was the client while practicing, or when I was the coach, like I said, when you self reflect, you also see patterns that are playing out for you. I think you begin to adopt a lot of healthy practices that don't that take you towards the place where you want to be. Like when you spoke about relationships, I was thinking about times when it would get difficult, right, with certain people to understand the thought process or the mindset. But I think when you take a step back, and that's what the coaching space provides you, right? Like take a step back. You are not like the driver in the car, right? Like sit back, let the person drive. You do begin to see more, and then you can see the larger picture, like how the person's, maybe what
yeah,
speed they enjoy, how they like to drive the car. So it's not about you. And when you do that, you actually, yeah, help both the
mm,
driver and yourself as well. So,
yeah. And this takes me, to the competency, 2.6, which is about develops and maintains the ability to regulate one's emotions. And when you said about this healthy practice, right, like initially, any emotional conversation, a difficult conversation, or sometimes clients come with a lot of baggage, right? Like, and then we would get succumbed in those emotions. I think just with practice, and that again, I really feel that, that sustaining to thriving is really about how do you kind of regulate your emotions to see that, to respond, and not to react, or not to hold for a longer time, because your energy is kind of, again, it's draining.
correct. Yeah, I really like that point about not holding on to things for a long time. If you're like, why did this happen? Why this? You kind of release that and you just let it be, because now you're operating from a point of either being flexible or curious about something, being open minded versus holding on to it, so tightly that you can only see it for what you think it is. And when
Mm,
you release it a little, you see it for all the other things that actually it could also be. And that does help, I think, in a huge way in getting into that zone of thriving, because you release that pressure. So you're not just, sustaining and just trying to get past certain things by being a particular way. You actually act and operate in a way that needs to be released so that you can be on that path of thriving. So you consciously make decisions that suit you and others around you. And automatically, like you said, because you do that, the relationships around you get better. The boundaries that are needed for any healthy relationship to exist also start growing, in a good way, without any surprises to people, because you're also clear with, how you're presenting yourself, how you are operating, what you're saying, and what you believe. I think it gets reflected then how you act further. So
The word boundary, right? It's totally in our limits to say how do we use that boundary, right? Like it's not like a negative connotation, or how do we
exactly.
then convert it, because it's not just about you, it's also about the other. So when we say about my boundary, it's serving me in one way, but it's also serving the other person in that way. Yeah.
Absolutely, exactly. And I think in many parts, and even growing up, I think a lot of times, I personally didn't understand that. It came across as, oh, maybe you're cutting off, or you are, I mean, it's not seen as, oh, maybe you're not being that open to every experience, but sometimes at a particular point, you need that. And then take one step at a time, or you explore accordingly. And I think it does give you that mindset without being a close minded person.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. I think it's been a reflective conversation, Kima, and I'm just thinking that it's all we are work in progress, right? In order for us to move, or to sustain itself is a big thing, right? To gather all these learnings, to put it into practice, and to sustain with it for a time, and then to thrive. So it's a journey, and we are work in progress. A lot of learnings for us, as individuals, and also it helps to understand the other. It helps to understand the relationship, and I think overall the well-being, right? Like I think this embodying a coaching mindset is for the overall well-being of a person, right? I think with that thought, we would like to end our conversation for today. Very excited to meet you again next week, next Friday. We'll be back again with our, small reflections,
discussion.
bite-sized learning, as we kind of, say that. So, Kiva, any last thought before we end our conversation today?
I would just love to, like, it would be great to hear from people on any of their stories, reflections after this Gupshup, or anything that you are trying in your own life. So it would be great to hear from you about that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. See you all. Thank you for joining in. Bye.